Greetings everyone, my name is Ettervale, and welcome to the finale of my Let's Play of Mega Man Dr. Wily's Final Attack. During the last part, I completed Wily Fortress Stages 1 through 3, so I'll continue directly into Wily Stage number 4. Now, I did some investigation, and apparently this Wily Fortress design is unique. It wasn't taken from a previous Mega Man fan title or mainline title. I checked both the NES, SNES, PlayStation, as well as the handheld titles, and there's no resemblance other than the skull, of course. Wily Fortress Stage number 4 is, of course, the typical Mega Man Roadmaster Rematch refight stage. Although the way it's designed is like Mega Man Base, where you don't have a choice in what order you fight the Roadmasters in. So it's time to slaughter the Roadmasters with all of their weaknesses. First up, we have Coppice Man, who is weak against the speed drill. I'm not sure why it would be the speed drill, but hey, I would think it'd be more like a fire-based weapon because it's for a Space Roadmaster, but apparently not. Then again, drills do destroy the forest land or something. Alright, here's Spearman. He's weak against the Frost Arrow. For some reason. I suppose it's because it's much easier to hit him with the Frost Arrow because of how much he moves around and how much the Frost Arrow can cover when shattering. Here's Digital Man. He's weak against the Hawk Seeker because of how much he stays in midair. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but there's a lot of weapon pickups at the beginning of the stage. I suppose those are for when you die, because once you start out the stage, you start up with full weapon energy and life energy. So I suppose that's when if you die, you can actually refill some of your weapons that you lost. Because I think that if you die, you'll need to refight all of the Roadmasters up to the point where you died. Unlike a previous Roadmaster rematch stages where you had a choice which order to do. At least that's what I think. I never really died in these rematch stages. Oh, and by the way, Weatherman is weak against the arrow. Or spear shot, I mean. My apologies, I keep confusing spears with arrows. Speed Woman is weak against the Blaring Blast, although I have one complaint about this weakness affiliation. It doesn't actually damage her enough to kill her with just one full weapon bar, which is a pet peeve of mine. Either increase the ammo of the Blaring Blast, or make it so that Speed Woman is more weak against the Blaring Blast. And for this Roadmaster, specifically Soundman, he wins this game's reward of being the most destroyed or most gimped by his weakness. I mean, look at it, I completely negate all of his sound orbs, as well as that giant loop. The only thing it probably doesn't negate is that giant Blaring Blast. But just look at it. Oh, poor Soundman. He's the one who is most gimped by this Roadmaster weapon. No other special weapon in the game works so effectively against its requisite strength against Roadmasters. I kinda prefer the Hatch Room refights because in that way I can take care of Roadmasters who are more difficult up front. Like for example Glacier Man or Coppice Man. Technically Coppice Man was first up front, but I would prefer it if I could face Glacier Man first or second because of how unpredictable or hard to dodge he is. Not unpredictable, but hard to dodge. Oh, and he's weak against the double shock because he's made out of water, or frozen water, so water conducts electricity. Earthman is weak against the control mine. It kind of makes sense because the mine will blow up the rocks. Plus, you can actually throw it down when you're dodging his speed drills. So it makes it a lot easier to hit him anywhere on screen. It's a perfect affiliation. And by defeating him, we've now completed all 8 of the mainline Roadmasters. We get all of those life and weapon pickups. This extra life, and so we'll be fighting the boss of this stage. A brainwashed roll. So yeah, Wily reprogrammed her. Funny enough, you can actually change weapons right during this cutscene. And we'll be fighting Roll now. Thankfully the MIDI, or this musical track, is a lot better than the MIDI. Now, she has 2 choices of attacks, and it depends on how far she jumps initially. In this one, she jumped a long distance. If she jumps a long distance, she'll actually do 2 charge rams at you using her fist, and then, well, do a charge ram, do a long jump, do another charge ram, then do a short jump, and when she hits the ground, she'll fire an orb which splits into 2. Or she'll fire that energy orb just like there, which will hit the ground and split into 2. And then she'll stay still, fire 3 shots in rapid succession just like Mega Man, and then do a charge shot. Alternatively, and after that she'll do another series of attacks depending on whether she does the short jump or long jump. Like if she does a short jump like here, she'll first do those, she'll fire those 2 energy orbs which split down and will jump in between, and then she'll do a long jump where she does that running dash or a dash fist attack. And keep in mind that when she does that long jump, she can bounce off of walls, so be careful. So be careful not to get trapped, especially when it does that ramming dash, or especially when she starts doing the 3 series of shots or the charge shot. Otherwise, she's not too bad. Definitely a nice challenge for a Fortress boss. It kind of reminds me of some of the other Roadmaster style fights, or man/woman fights, like the battles against Proto Man, Base, etc. And we're moving into Wily Fortress number 5. It's time to actually fight Dr. Wily's new machine. And you get a complimentary E-Tank. This is another nice stage for farming E-Tanks, although the previous stage you can keep exiting and re-entering the stage to get 2 free E-Tanks. Although you don't really need that many E-Tanks for the end bosses. And here's the Wily machine. There are 2 phases, of course. I'll first fight it without its weakness and then with its weakness. First, it's going to keep chasing you and you need to keep running to the right side of the screen, and after every so interval it'll fire bombs at you, at your current position. After it fires a series of bombs, these platforms appear. Make sure to jump up on them because they'll fire a giant laser at you. It's not instant death, it just does a lot of damage. With just the Mega Buster alone, you can basically tree-cycle it and you'll be able to take care of the first phase. It's definitely not one of the more It's not that challenging of a Wily machine fight, thankfully, because there are not that many projectiles going all the time. There's only really 2 projectiles in the first phase. Once you destroy it, Dr. Wily is revealed, and we're in phase 2. This is where it gets a lot more dangerous. First, he blows up the ground, so you have to make sure not to fall in the pits or get hit by these rockets he's firing, which ever slow edge closer to the right side of the screen in terms of where it'll hit the ground. So make sure not to get hit by those in midair. And then after he releases that final rocket, which is flashes indicating it will cover the entire ground, then make sure to jump over it. He'll start firing those 6 laser beams at you. Thankfully, when it's in midair, you can actually cross the laser beam and you won't take any damage. It's just when it hits the ground, it'll create a ground-based projectile moving towards you. Make sure to jump over that. What's so dangerous about this part of the fight is falling into instant death pits, usually from the rockets or from the lasers. That took my life 3 times in this. Anyways, here's the refight against this using special weapons. His first phase is weak against the spear shot, which you can 1 round and win. And then in the second phase, his weakness is the Blaring Blast, and once that runs out, use the Hawkseeker. And that's it. If you use his weaknesses, you can basically 1-cycle each of his phases. Only 1 more stage left to go through, Wily Fortress Stage number 6. And this is the last actual stage of the Wily Fortress which has an actual stage instead of just being a Roadmaster refight. It is definitely one of the toughest stages in the game due to how precise it can be sometimes, although in retrospect it's not as difficult as, let's say, 1 or 3. You've learned enough about the stages that you can get through this fine as long as you take it carefully. I did die 3 times through this stage, but that was due to the beginning segment, and that's where I learned that the spikes can be a little bit solid. I also died about 2 times here when missed timing my jumps. Here's the last time we'll be fighting this giant duck. It's a combination of the Sound Man's stage gimmick, where you have to worry about getting hit by the giant blaring blast by the invisible speaker here, and you need to hit the duck at the face. It's here. I also didn't realize it until this second part, but the glass tube on the left is solid. I thought it wasn't solid. It's basically an upward climb to the challenge. To be fair, each screen is kind of like a remix version of each Roadmaster, to be fair. Like, we already had the Sound Man, we have Speed Woman, we even had Glacier Man earlier. Yeah, basically this last stage has at least 1 or 2 screens dedicated to each of the previous Roadmasters. Well, the mainline Roadmaster specifically. Here we have Earthman's. I quite enjoy it actually, it's kind of like another remix of the stages in the Wily Fortress but condensed into one nice chunk. Well, we're up to 90 tanks, we don't really need it anymore. Thankfully that extra life actually respawns so you can refight the final boss several times. Normally you would actually expect to fight a Wily capsule, but nope, we're fighting Robo-Wily. I'll leave my thoughts on that in the final part. First he starts by running towards you, he jumps back a bit, and then when he moves along to the left side of the screen he fires those 3 projectiles. He'll then jump to the other side of the screen releasing those sparks, make sure to run close to him so you can guide it away. And then he'll bounce around in his spiky ball form. Once he goes to the right side, he'll fire those projectiles which travel on the ground, and if you go pass right over it, it'll start elevating upwards or traveling upwards. So make sure to try guiding it away. But otherwise, he's a pretty fast final boss fight. But I do enjoy it because it's a nice change of pace from the often overused Wily capsule fights. I totally didn't expect it when I was playing this game for the first time. Also another nice change, Dr. Wily doesn't actually literally exit out of the stage to the right, he jumps into his Wily capsule, or Wily machine, Wily UFO. Another nice change, here's the reference to Dr. Wily's next nefarious plan. Yep, we have a Zero reference that wasn't there before either. And that ends Dr. Wily's final attack. Here we have a nice outro showing off all the Roadmasters with some rather sad music from Mega Man 2's ending. It's really not appropriate for this game because I don't feel sad for destroying these Roadmasters, it's not like Rock Force. There needs to be more context for that. Well, I suppose this is a good time as any to give my final thoughts on this game as a whole. First, let me talk about the level design in the pro sense. I'd like to divide the stages in this game into 3 different types. Unique ones, semi-unique ones, and normal ones. The most unique stages were Digital Man's and Sound Man's. Digital Man because there aren't that many digital-based Roadmasters in the series, or even fan titles. In fan titles I can think of Cypher Man or Dagger Man. In the main title I can think of Sheep Man being one. That counts as digital, but it's relatively uncommon. Even more so for sound-based Roadmasters. I mean, I can think of Blast Man from Mega Man Revolution, but other than that, I can't think of other sound-based Roadmasters. Semi-unique ones are Speed Woman, because we had some speed-based stages, quite a few actually. Maybe I should put that unique, I'm not sure. Spear Man, because we had several types of building-based Roadmasters like Yamada Man and such. And Weatherman, because it's like the classic Sky stage, but I mark it as semi-unique because we have 4 different seasons that we go through, from spring to summer to fall to winter. Although if you had more control over the seasons, like in Cloudman stage from Mega Man 7, I would rate it higher. Normal-based Roadmasters are Earthman, Coppice Man, and Glacier Man, because we already had a lot of Earth, Forest, and Frost-based Roadmasters, so nothing really special there. Although I'll give some props to Glacier Man, and somewhat to Coppice Man. Really, Earthman is one of the more boring stages in the game because of how tame it is and how it doesn't really have that much unique other than probably some of the enemies, like the tanks, and those seesaws. Alright, now for the overall pros of this title. The level design is certainly solid. In terms of difficulty, I would place it around medium to hard. We have easy levels like Digital Man to more challenging levels like Glacier Man and Weatherman. A regular player can get through the game with only a few game overs, at most, and most of the enemies and mini-bosses don't prove to be a challenging effort to destroy. But regardless of the difficulty, the challenge is always fair. Gimmick usage and enemy usage are always introduced in a safe enough environment so that players can get used to them. It's even fairer with the addition of force beams no longer being instant dead anymore. Same with all of the boss fights being fair. Most of the musical tracks are appropriate for the levels and were improved following version updates. As for weapon variety, the weapon variety for this game was pretty nice. Double Shock is a nice short-range piercing weapon, although I lost use for it later because there weren't that many enemies who were guarded. Like Sniper Joes, because of the changes, you can actually just shoot at them using either other special weapon and take care of them. In the previous version where Sniper Joes acted like the original ones, Double Shock was much more useful. Blaring Blast is a powerful screen-clearing weapon, it's one of the best ones I've seen in Mega Man fan games. The Speed Drill is a great auto-firing short to medium-ranged weapon, though its damage will likely fall off in long ranges due to its random front-forward firing pattern, although you can get lucky. Seasonal Barrier is an amazing barrier weapon, that's for sure. It's capable of destroying most foes and projectiles before dissipating. Even following its nerf, it's still powerful. In fact, it's one of the most powerful barrier weapons in the entire fan game series, or fan titles. Frost Arrow is a difficult but awesome weapon whose effectiveness scales very well depending on your skill level. Although it's more designed for slower but tougher enemies because of how much time it can take to actually get the frost arrows coming out. But once you do, you can pack up a huge punch. The Hawkseeker is a great seeker weapon whose only downside is not being able to retrieve pickups. If it did be able to take pickups, it would definitely be something like up there with the Yoku attack or like the magic card in terms of usefulness. But still, being able to attack enemies anywhere is pretty nice. It's about the same as where I would rate it like in the Jet Missile from Mega Man Unlimited. The Spear Shot is a good weapon for dealing with long-range foes. Compared with the Speed Drill, it doesn't have any RNG in its firing pattern, it can be aimed and deals the same amount of damage, and only 2 instead of 4 can be on screen at once. I keep mixing it up with calling it the Speed Arrow mainly because the spear looks a lot more like an arrow. So it's better for foes out of close range or medium range. Control Mine is an explosive weapon that penetrates shields, but I didn't use it as much because there were usually better weapons available. If there were more guarded enemies in the game, I'd use this more, or more lines of enemies on ground. The special attack, despite its name, is great utility that acts essentially like the Super Eddie version, dropping a big life energy, extra life, or E-Tank. Alright, now time for my cons with this game. Some of them are kind of subjective. Let me get the biggest one out of the way. Many of the Roadmasters follow a set pattern too much. Digital, Sound, Weather, and Earthman all suffer from this, and to a lesser extent, Spearman also suffers from this. Now, to explain, I don't mind if a boss follows a strict or partly strict pattern if they are some combination of fast moving, fast acting, harder to hit, able to create room dangers like spikes, able to fire lots of projectiles, and have a complex pattern. That's why I don't mind Brian Man or the Wily Fortress battles. Coppice Man, Glacier Man, Speed Woman, and Roll have some elements of reacting directly to the player's movement or shooting. The player can also influence what attacks the Wily slot machine will do, so that's why I kind of prefer those bosses over the previous 4 bosses I mentioned. Now, I don't mind if 1 or 2 out of 8 Roadmaster bosses follow a strict pattern, but when there's about 4 or 5 of them, I start taking issue. To clarify what I mean by strict pattern in this context, I mean more along the lines of acting completely independently of the player. Speed Woman, for example, has a set pattern of sorts, but when and where she drops the set of tree mines depends on the player's positioning. So there's more variation of what can happen during the boss fight. I rail on this point more for this game due to there being more of a limited move pool for Mega Man. Adding sliding and charging opens up a lot more possibilities, so usually more tolerant of independent acting bosses in those titles. But it's kind of a subjective complaint on my part because some people may enjoy those bosses. I do say they were well designed, but I kind of prefer more reactive bosses or ones with more complex patterns. It'll be interesting comparing the boss encounters of this game to the next Mega Man fan game I'll be playing very soon. My second complaint is that some of the musical changes from the first version to version 1.1.1 are a little bit not as good as the original ones. As I said earlier, most of the MIDI tracks were replaced with 8-bit mixes or chiptunes. I honestly prefer the original tracks for Soundman, Speed Woman, and Wily Stage 4, and the Wily Machine Battle. Otherwise, I prefer or don't mind the track changes. Well, with that out of the way, it's time for my conclusion. This game takes the Mega Man 2 design paradigm of only being able to jump and shoot, having no access to shops, and provides a solid experience. Actually, it's even more limited due to the lack of utility items outside of the special attack, which is more like a super version of Eddie. In the original Mega Man 2 we had items 1, 2, and 3, but here we only have the special attack. Even then it's not a movement ability. We don't even have a movement ability in this game, in fact. So it's kind of like a mix between Mega Man 1's and Mega Man 2's design paradigm. But as the saying goes, limitations breed creativity. When we are more limited in terms of the tools or mechanisms we can utilize, the more creative we usually become in using the limited selection. Although I prefer the Mega Man 4 to Mega Man 6 style of NES Mega Man, where you have the slide, charge shot, rush, and some other utilities or helpers, or some other parts or whatnot, I can see how much work was put into constructing and polishing up these stages, enemies, gimmicks, mini-bosses, and bosses. It's certainly not an ambitious title like Revenge of the Fallen, Rock Force, and Revolution are, yet for what the title aimed to accomplish, it hit relatively high marks, or very high marks in some regards. My first assessment of this title was too harsh, I completely admit that. I originally rated this title as being average in terms of fun factor. But after playing this game again in lieu of recent updates, and after I gained more experience and perspective from playing through several other fan games, about a dozen or so, I'd say this game deserves a lot more. It's solidly constructed and takes the quote-unquote Mega Man 2 style and breathes new life and polish into it. Currently, I'd rate this fan game as being above average or good. Which is a lot to say because I would rate most Mega Man fan games to be about average or below average. So it passed a lot of bars in my regard. I kind of had lower expectations on this, but it completely blew me away, especially in the second version, and after I got more experience and more perspective reviewing stages, and once I got a lot less harsh. So well done, Jordan Delp and the rest of the people who worked on this title. I'll certainly recommend trying out this title to others. Well then, I thank you all for watching this LP, viewers. Your feedback and support are always appreciated. If you liked this LP, please leave a like, comment, and/or subscribe. They all help out the channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next LP.